Welcome to a Student of the Gun Special Edition. I'm here with Sergeant First Class Jim Gilliland, and he has a distinction of holding the longest sniper shot with a .308 rifle. Jim, thanks for coming with us today.
Good to be here.
Quick background, you are in the United States Army?
I am. Right now I'm serving in the 3rd Infantry Division in Fort Stewart, Georgia. Currently on orders to go back to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Now, how long have you been in the Army?
Just went over 15 years. 15 years and a couple of days now.
I thank you for your service. Now, you've obviously, during the current global war on terror, been overseas, I'm guessing, several times.
Correct.
And the one that everyone likes to talk about was your tour in 2005.
That's correct.
Can you give us a little background about how that went and how it began?
Sure. I was picked up in the 2nd Battalion, 69th Armored on Fort Benning, Georgia. It's part of the 3rd Infantry Division. It's 3rd Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division. I was selected to take over as Sniper Section Sergeant. I went over there and we ran about 3 weeks of a selection course. Picked up 9 additional guys, 3 team leaders and 2 shooters per team leader, for a total of a 10-man sniper section.
Jim, let's talk about hardware. People like to talk about hardware. They like to talk about rifles. What kind of hardware were you using? The M24?
Our primary sniper rifle was the Army-issued M24. We had 4 of them. Each team had one, and then I had one specific. The next weapon that we used, it was in the accuracy realm, was we had an M16A5. And essentially, the United States Army Marksmanship Unit built these rifles specifically for the SDM project, the Squad Designated Marksman.
Okay.
They took M16s with the flat top uppers, rebarreled them with a heavy free-floated fluted barrel, Daniel Defense rails, and put 2-stage triggers in them. And with that platform, we're easily shooting under 1 minute of angle, shooting at least 1 inch at 100 yards.
That's with the 77 grain?
With 77 grain Black Hills.
Black Hills,
correct.
okay.
The Mark 262, as the Army knows it. Excellent round. It was both very, very accurate, and then the terminal damage was very well.
That's a good point, because you hear a lot of scuttlebutt, and there's a lot of chit-chat on the internet and the web, like, oh, you know, the 5.56 it's a worthless round and we should get rid of it. But for the 77 grain Mark 262, getting the job done against enemy personnel?
It was our primary means of incapacitation for overseas. And we actually had one incident where when they brought an individual back, the surgeon that was attached to our unit, who's a shooter, a big loader and hunter, he comes up and he's like, you know, you can tell a big difference between a .308 and a 223. I'm like, well, how do you mean? He was talking about, well, the guy that we brought in today, you know, it was pretty devastating entry. I was like, well, we didn't shoot .308 today. We shot 5.56. We worked it out, and it was in fact one of the individuals that we'd shot with a 5.56, and the devastation was enough to where it was mistaken for a higher caliber round.
Now, you use sound suppressors on that platform right there?
We had a few. We purchased 3 SoundTech suppressors before we went over. We got a good deal on them, and went ahead and purchased them. And they were placed 1 on an STM rifle and 2 were on our M4s.
Now, did you find, especially when you're watching the suspects, the insurgents, and you would launch a round through a suppressor, that they had a more difficult time locating the origin of the shot and so forth? Did it help you from a tactical standpoint?
It probably did. The biggest thing that we were looking for is low light scenarios where we could cover our flash.
Flash suppression.
That was the biggest
or signature reduction, I guess, is the hot term right now, is signature reduction.
Correct. And then with the sounds, because we're using supersonic ammo, with the sound reduction, it did throw them off a little bit to where they had to look, if they were starting to look for us, they would have to look harder.
Kind of like a ventriloquist act, where they don't, it doesn't sound like the rifle shot is coming from the rifle. It sounds like it's coming from a different direction.
Because essentially you're not hearing the rifle at this point. You're only hearing the sonic crack. So, yep, correct.
Fantastic. Now, all right, let's talk about the long shot.
Sure.
The long shot was how far?
It's 1,250 meters.
1,250 meters with a .308. That was which ammunition?
It was an M24, a Standard Army M24 with the M3 Alpha Leopold, and we were using M118 LR, which is a Lake City brass with a 175 grain Sierra Match King. and it's a standard Army issue sniper round now.
Now, you didn't set out that day to break any records. It kind of, did it fall into your lap, or was it perfect conditions? How did that work out?
Where we were located was, it was an outpost. We had my sniper team on the top floor, always, and we had an American platoon that stayed in this building always, and then it was a company of Iraqi Jundis, or privates basically, that stayed on the bottom floor of the building. The building was the largest one in our area, and it was right on the side of an MSR, the MSR Michigan, actually. It was a main service route that was a high IED location. So we used that to kind of control that part of the road, and it was right there coming into Ramadi. So it was a static location that we had. We built it up, we sandbagged the inside of the walls, we knocked a couple of loopholes, shooting areas. We had shooting tables set up, and on our shooting tables we had maps of the area in front of us so that we could reference, when people would call us from the ground, we could reference where they were and we could crosstalk between each other. We had used our laser rangefinders and got dedicated distances to each landmark in our area. So we knew already that the hospital that this individual was eventually in was at 1,250 meters. The Alpha Company commander had told us earlier that they were going to do a cordon search about 600 meters to the north of the hotel. That's what we called it, the OP Hotel. So we were overwatching them, just making sure that there was nothing going on around them or somebody trying to sneak up. Because often we had, when a patrol was out, we had RPG gunners or IED teams that would come in and try to hit the exfil route. Correct.
Yeah.
So we were just watching them. We had a couple of guys skylining themselves on the roofs of buildings. Basically, we're standing up on top of the buildings. And when you do that, there's all flat lines, all straight lines, and then you have an individual. It just throws, it's a big signature.
Yeah.
So we were calling, called a couple of times, said, hey, we need to get our guys off the roof. And about the third time that this happened, we picked up the radio, started to key the mic, and there was a single round. It was a single gunshot. Immediately went into full alert, started scanning the areas. The commander on the ground calls up to us on the radio and says, hey, we're taking rounds. We think it's coming from the hospital. I had a Leopold Mark IV spot and scope on a Manfrotto bipod. We wheeled it around, watching the hospital, and we see one individual on the top floor, on the fourth floor of the hospital in Ramadi. He steps up towards the window, and we can see clearly that he had a rifle. It's some type of a long-barreled Kalashnikov type rifle. Could be an SVD, or it could have been a Tabuk, which is a 7.62x39 rifle that is designed a lot like the SVD.
The Dragunov.
The Dragunov, correct. But it's Iraqi made.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I moved the spot and scope out of the way, pulled my rifle up, which was in front of me. I had an M24. We were planning on shooting between 500 and 700 meters, so clearly, could use the M24 for that. Wasn't expecting to be pushed that far out. We put the BDC, we turned it to shoot 1,000 meters, and then did a few quick wind calculations and an over yardage calculation, and really just kind of threw around down there. Got behind the rifle as closely as possible and squeezed off around, hoping to get this individual, get it close enough to get this individual out of the weapon.
Get his attention.
Right.
Yeah.
So there were machine gunners and saw gunners on the ground at 600 meters where the building was. They could get better accurate fires, on the building than we could. So in trying to buy time, but launched one round. Time of flight was just over 2 seconds, and made contact with the individual, pretty much center mass of his chest, and he grimaced and collapsed on the balcony. We then we set the M24 to the side and pulled up the Barrett, one of the guys, because it's more of a longer range shot. But at this time, the scenario was already over. So we just used the tools we had, in front of us, and a lot of that comes into just knowing your equipment, knowing your capabilities of your equipment and yourself, and doing the best of what you have at the time.
Well, congratulations on that, and I certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit here with us and talk. From the Tactical Rifle Shop in Zephyr Hill, Florida, I'm Paul Markle, and Sergeant First Class Gilliland, I'd like to thank you for your service to our nation, and congratulations on that long shot.
Obliged.